Well, good morning again, and it is now 9:40 on the 18th of July, 2023. This is Mirador Television, broadcasting out of the White Hart Hotel in Lewes. In the background, one of my good friends who is pouring the beer, testing the beer, and he normally comes and he bonks me on the head and he says, "Here, Keith, get this down you before the yardarm appears, and tell me if it's any good." So, with any luck at all, I shall get my first drink of the day within about 10 minutes. He's got a determined look on his face. Now, we in the news headlines this morning is probably one of the most important, certainly in terms of health, that we've had for a long time. And that is that Altzeimers may be on the run, that a new drug has, in tests, shown to work quite dramatically on keeping the dreaded disease at bay. And as a consequence, while we had a very, very full program yesterday morning, asking questions, which we're now waiting to see if we can get answers, is what's happening when it comes to the South Over House, and are we actually paying to support a charity which has plenty of money in the bank? It's a question which maybe there is a legitimate answer, but we need the answer. We need this lot in charge at the moment. Is they keep everything close to their chest. They don't like to think that we should know anything about what they do. Well, not true, I'm afraid. So we asked the question is, are we paying for a Charleston charity to occupy the now old South Over offices of Lewes District Council? Because it was a travesty that we should go to Eastbourne in the first place. But what this lot do, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about the politicians that are elected or the administrators who run the district, it goes from disaster to disaster. They don't do what they do very well anyway, but in doing it, they have really taken the heart out of this town, and somebody is going to have to put it back. There's got to be restored the pride that there was in Lewes, restored the excitement, restored the fact that people would say, yes, you should come to Lewes and take a look. Oh, and who is going to do that? Heaven only knows, Alison. Heaven only knows. But what I did do is I dug out two programs that we did in the very, very early days of this television station, just to remind us what goes down, as they say, and hopefully the picture quality will be good enough to show you what we were talking about 4 or 5 years ago, and how in the very early days of Mirador there are things that of interest to the outside world. So let's give it a try, and hopefully it will be a good enough picture for us to enjoy. welcome to Mirador Television. This is local TV, but probably not local TV as you know it. We don't have much cash, so for one thing, we have to do much of our stuff outside. We don't even have a studio. So we don't even have a weather presenter. But we will try to bring you the weather. So when you see me with an umbrella, it's raining. So when I have my walking stick, it's fine. If my hat blows off, it's windy. Well, the sad thing is that that's about 5 years old. The quality just isn't up to, or you're getting us a befuddled picture at home. So we will now go to some good old standbys, not to bore you to death, but there are lots of things that people haven't seen that they find interesting, and hopefully we'll get a much better picture than we got from that. So let's just see what we do have, and I'll tell you one thing. No. Hey. Let's just go to the garden, shall we? And just enjoy the garden for a minute or two.
Good morning, peeps. We're back in Hailsham after 3 weeks. I've had a few issues going on with health and various other stuff, but back to full strength again now. Gardens are looking good. As you can see, the rain is here to help things grow. So our little perennial garden in Hailsham that we've been working on for the last few months is now really coming together. We've got enormous hollyhocks growing, the alliums are all out, ciceriniums. It's an absolute blast of life now, and we're still not in the main growing season, so another few weeks it will really come to life. I walk down through the garden and you'll see there's a naughty dog hiding in the hedge as usual. But we'll have a stroll over here and we'll have a look at the vegetables. So as you can remember, we planted courgettes and peas and sugar snaps in the outside bed. And as you can see, these have come on an absolute treat. So the courgettes are now flowering, and the sugar snaps and the peas are doing remarkably well. I'm very pleased. In fact, they're flowering as well. I'm just going to spin around at this low level and show you how the garden is looking. Look at that. That is a proper perennial garden. And as you can see, the theme of purple, white and green has been completely maintained. And actually, I'm really pleased with it. It's looking nice. Obviously, the second year, next year, it will look better. Gardens always come into their own once they've been in and they've established. But Bruce, who lives here, is doing a marvellous job. Excuse me, marvellous job of watering everything. I've just done some light weeding, and the ground is really soft. So he really has been watering, especially during that really hot spell we had. I'll just show you the greenhouse, because the greenhouse is also doing remarkably well. We've got a couple of cucumbers, which are also just flowering. Then we've got some chilies, some peppers, and then an array of tomatoes. Unfortunately, we did have a little bit of a disaster, and as you can see, my greenhouse here has no door. So I'm not actually able to keep it really warm, but it's not the end of the world, because during the really warm days, you are meant to open the greenhouse, otherwise it can all start to, you can get too much moisture in there and things can rot. Joey, stop that. Things can rot and you can have problems. So it's not the end of the world, but it does mean that on obviously cooler days and days like this when it's raining, you don't get the heat going in there. So our crops will be possibly later than some people. The reason why we have no door is because the storms that came earlier in the year basically blew the door off. It flew across the garden and shattered. So that was the end of the door, really. But yes, it's really coming together. It's going to show you this enormous hollyhock, which in a couple of weeks' time should have a prong of about 2 or 3 feet on top with beautiful, I think these are pink, pinky purple, because I bought those to go with the white foxgloves, which you can see in the middle there. There is a white foxglove just coming up. The other foxgloves haven't actually flowered yet. Anyhow, just a short one today because I'm just getting myself back into the swings of things. It's been a really busy few weeks. The gardening world is going crazy. It always does in May, June. Well, April, May and June are always the busiest times of the year. But we'll be back here next week, and hopefully by then we might even have some sugar snap peas and more too that maybe could be picked and eaten. So that'll be where we are. Anyway, from Joey and I, have a good day. See you soon. Bye.
Well, that was a short visit, wasn't it? It's Alex with Joey, or it's Joey with Alex, whichever way around it is. I think that what we'll do is I see one here where I pontificate about drinks. Why don't we actually treat it with a little bit of lightheartedness this morning, particularly after the seriousness of the day, and particularly since the feel-good factor is there in the hopefully a breakthrough with Alzheimer's, dementia. So perhaps we should try to stay feeling good. So let's see if I can do that for you. Well, wine. Wine. No beer. Gracious as well. Not even going to talk about wine. Thought I was, but I've decided instead, and sometimes the nose, the nose for a nice drink, steers you in a different direction, as indeed does a nose for a good story. I was going to spend just a minute or two talking about cocktails. Now I'm going to talk about them for several minutes. Because when I was researching cocktails to find out where they were nowadays, and I thought that they'd all but disappeared, even though one of my favourite tipples is a Bloody Mary, which properly made is indeed considered to be a cocktail. But as I researched and remembered some of the glory days, I also remembered a French journalist called Pierre Danineau, who in the 60s wrote a column for Le Figaro. And there's always been friendly banter between the French and the English about how they see us and we see them. They call us roast beef. I don't dare tell you what we sometimes call them. But the roast beef, Major Thompson, a character created by Pierre Delano, was the typical English gentleman. He always was impeccably dressed in a suit, carried a brolly. Some places in the Western world it's known as a bumbershoot, and was carrying a briefcase in most instances, in which Delano pointed to an invisible briefcase in which one could see a sandwich, which he said every English gentleman carried for his lunch, and also a penny. A penny in old coins, I don't know, about half a cent, I suppose, half a euro, half a what. But anyway, half a new pence was carried because that's the amount that it took to put into the slot of the public toilet. So every English gentleman was always prepared. And Delano paints an incredible picture of the English gentleman. But in one of his books, and he wrote several about Major Thompson and about the English, is he writes about Major Thompson going to New York and finding himself, and I suppose this would be in the 1960s, finding himself invited to a cocktail party. And as a good English gentleman, sort of more or less pines, what on earth is a cocktail party? Well, I was in North America in the 1960s, and I enjoyed many, many cocktail parties. They were the center of social existence, and people prepared very carefully not only the food that they would offer to their guests, but also what sort of cocktails. One of the vestiges of the cocktail circuit was a chain of cocktail bars, I suppose they were, but they were restaurant cocktail bars called Trader Vic's, and they were built in the image of a Polynesian war room, where the warriors would gather ready to go out and bash heads over any silly Englishman who dared to stand on their shores, and indeed they did do to various people, including Captain Cook. But these were stylized cocktail bars, and they had some exotic cocktails. They were a mixture of rum-based and fruit juice cocktails with wonderful names like a Wahine, a Molokai Mike, and the wonderful Scorpion. The Scorpion was a large bowl with a gardenia floating in the middle of this rum and fruit cocktail concoction. Each of the drinkers was given a straw, and you raced to see who could finish it. You didn't need too many of those throughout the evening to know that you'd been at Trader Vic's and you'd had a Scorpion. The other strange thing was that the bowl in which it came, there were 4 fertility figures, and it was almost impossible not to sort of pat them on the head. So I rather think that they helped the population explosion at the time. Nonetheless, that was the cocktail of the day. And cocktails were in such full flurry, such full flush. They were so acceptable in society that Esquire magazine and Playboy magazine put out books on how to make the perfect cocktail, but also 365 reasons to have a cocktail party. And what I remember particularly was Jiffy the giraffe's birthday. Jiffy the giraffe was an animal that had been secreted in one zoo or another throughout the world, but everybody was invited on a particular day to have a cocktail party to celebrate Jiffy the giraffe's birthday. Such was the grip of cocktails in those days. Not anymore. I woke up the other day and thought about cocktails, and I thought, yes, we still have them. You still see them advertised in pubs and bars, but the range and the wonder of the cocktail age has gone almost forever. Now, in researching this, I thought, in my halcyon days, I had my wahinis and the occasional scorpion in Trader Vic's in Vancouver, in British Columbia. And I thought, I wonder what it was like. Do I remember it? So I looked up various pictures of the Trader Vic's cocktail bar in the Bayshore Inn in Vancouver. And sure enough, it flooded back with memories. But quite accidentally, I came across a newspaper article praising a very well-known local lady Diane Forsyth Abbott. And she was pictured with a number of ladies, and she was a master of the art of making good banquets and dinner parties and so on, and had gained international recognition for that. And I looked and I thought, you know, that name rings a bell. So I did a bit more research, and sure enough, my good friend of many a year, David Kingsville Abbott, had married her. I think she was about the fourth wife that he'd had, and I knew all of them. David was a great character, an Irishman. He once, when he was in Ireland and I was in Northern Ireland, turned up at the front door and said, Keith, I've made a mistake. I made a booking at a hotel and they haven't got any record of it. I've got the entire Irish athletics team with me. What can you do? So we spread the Irish athletics team out around many houses in the area and had half a dozen lying on my floor for the night. One was a trainee priest who fell in love with my daughter, which was not a very good thing for either of them, since priests were still, I suppose, supposed to not have sex and to be absolutely pure as the driven snow. Anyway, I've wandered a little bit off track because David would regularly hold court in the Bayshore Inn to have cocktails. We had many a good time, but he was recognized by the authority in British Columbia by being given a fellowship, a lifetime award for his contribution to broadcasting, not least of which is also to cocktail drinking. And I've got that little thing again which tells me that I'm running out of time, but nonetheless it's a good thing probably because I've rabbited on for quite some time. And it's a strange way, I suppose, of talking about the cocktail. But cocktails are wonderful things, and I would hope that they might make a return. And that in remembering my good friend David Kingsville Abbott, by seeing his picture with his wife, Diane Forsyth Abbott, and his daughter Ingrid in newspaper articles surrounding Trader Vic's, made me cast my mind back to different days when I was living in North America. The cocktail was king in North America. I'm not sure that it was ever king here. I'm not sure that it ever really caught on. But a cocktail is a cocktail is a cocktail, and they are marvelous things. So we had planned to talk about wine snobbery. Quite important. So many people are intimidated by going to parties where everybody seems to know what they're talking about when it comes to wine. 90% of them don't. It's just an effect. It's a way to show that they are rather superior to the people around them. So don't be intimidated, and there is a little trick that you can get around to fight back. And we were also going to have a little bit of a cricket, because many a day I have sat in the long room at many different county ground and England ground and had a drink, not necessarily a cocktail, while the innings was going on and wickets were tumbling and bowlers were having a field day. And so often happened in the 70s and the 80s. Not so much today. We're rather better at cricket than we were. But anyway, we will talk about wine snobbery, and we'll talk about cricket in our next program, which comes in a week's time. So I hope that you'll forgive my ramblings, but it just shows how you can start off with Pierre Danino and a column in Le Figaro, about what an Englishman is in the eyes of a Frenchman, all the way through the cocktail circuit to Vancouver, British Columbia, where I suddenly rediscovered an old friend who unfortunately passed into the great cocktail bar in the sky in 2017, David Kingsville Allen. So please forgive me for my memories, and I'll see you soon. In the cocktail way, toodle pip, toodle pip. Hello. 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 We've got a little technical. Well, wine. Wine. No beer. Gracious as well. Not even going to talk about wine. Thought I was, but I've decided instead, and sometimes the nose, the nose for a nice drink, steers you in a different direction, as indeed does a nose. Well, there we are. I think I retained some sort of calm for the moment. It's now 7 minutes past 10, and it's a day that there is some rejoicing going on because Altzeimers maybe, and I'm always very cautious of these things, be on the run. But when the scientific community and government feel comfortable enough to make an announcement, you know that there is a significant stride forward. It's something that should be done and can be done because they don't like egg on their face and they don't like the lawsuits and so on if they get it wrong. So I'm sure that the advances that are made are very significant. I sometimes take a look behind the headlines, and it's the sort of thing that is. Well, now here is something that is very close to our heart in New York, because yesterday Rishi Sunak, and it was headlines. Rishi Sunak said he was going to crack down on university degrees which are useless. And I fall somewhere between two stools on this. We have had a number of students over the years, and it has not been a huge success. Aha! Good morning, Mr. Kevin.
Good morning, sir.
There we are. Now, this is show your face. This is Kevin, who looks after me. He's part of that great backroom staff we've got. If only I can match up to it with the technical, we'd be in great shape. But Kevin, I say, Kevin, this has gone wrong. That's gone wrong. And he immediately steps forward and fixes it for me.
Right.
He's a terrific man. Yeah.
Right.
And not only that, he's in charge of the beer too. Makes him terribly important. So let's just do that because we do that on a Tuesday. Oh, yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, it's going to be a good day for the beer drinkers. Beer is in good shape. We'll put it there just to and so on. But I was we have rants. I haven't ranted for a while. I haven't got excited. I haven't yelled, and I haven't thumped the desk. But what we have found is the young people are bright. in many instances, they're ambitious. But when it comes to accepting what the real world is like, is that they are very reluctant. And we've had people who come in and they don't accept that television, the reality of television, is quite different to that which they had managed to get the impression from their tutors. And many tutors at universities, particularly in media, have never actually worked in television. They know the fine points. I remember way back in my university days, I had a friend, I can't remember his name, Bill Hart, and he was the senior professor of fine art in the arts department. And Bill could take you through any painting of any artist anywhere in the world. He could talk to you about the texture. He could talk to you about the paints. He could talk to you about composure. He could talk to you about the history of the artist. He was a master of his craft, except that he lacked one thing. He could not see an inherent beauty in the paintings that he's talking about. He only saw them as a commodity. And in the real art world, that gets you nowhere. And it's a bit that way in media. Sure, you need to be able to shoot. Nowadays, particularly in self-op, you need to be able to shoot with your own camera, to edit your own material. Very good it is. But you also need to realize that the application isn't just in itself. That's not the end result. That's contributing to what you're offering as television viewing. And they could not get their mind around that concept. Sure. Can't you see? Look what a great job we did. But on one occasion, we used them and left them unsupervised because they assured us that they could do things. To do a program we had started with Andrew Sloan, who ran a barber shop here. And they hadn't bothered to check their camera. They ran out of power partway through the shoot. They didn't let him know what was happening. They more or less just packed up and left him to it. And they scuttled off, and they didn't even come back to the studio. They scuttled off back to university. They knew what they'd done. But their professors were so defensive of them that it did them absolutely no good whatsoever. In real life, it's important to fail, or at least to accept when you do fail. I'm not saying it should be an objective. But they found it very difficult. And not only that, but the university found it very difficult. As if the brownie points that they were going to get to support their existence were far more important than what they were teaching these youngsters themselves. We had another chap here, and he had got some idea of what television was all about, what life was all about. And to shake his belief by the experience is almost impossible. There has got to be the practical side of television, taught and imbued. Taught and imbued. Because it's like anything in the training course, it's all fairly happy. There isn't anybody to tell you that's wrong, or why did you do that? And the concept of, for the 9 o'clock news, turning up with the package before 9 o'clock has quite often escaped the importance with these youngsters, because they were so busy or so used to going to their tutor and saying, I haven't quite finished. My assignment is due tomorrow. Can I have a couple more days? Yes, of course you can. Well, the real world of television isn't like that. You have to turn it in when you're supposed to turn it in. So we had some difficulty in getting students to assimilate. And we had a young chap, Amar, yesterday. Seemed a very nice young man. And he listened quite intently. And I hope that perhaps he's going to prove the exception to the rule. He certainly knows his stuff. He's certainly very polite and very nice, and seems to be quite keen. The proof of the pudding will be, because Stuart Dolby, a long time journalist, recognizes also the deficiencies of the modern training courses for media. There is no facility for making sure that the students get their fingernails dirty, that they belly up to the front line, take their share of peril and disaster. So when Sunak has said a lot of degrees aren't worth the paper they're written on, I'm very well, I believe that he's absolutely right. It's not even a question of opinion. He's right. And we abandoned way back in the 1970s, was it? An apprenticeship program. Britain had a magnificent apprenticeship program, and we abandoned it because everybody must have a degree. Well, that philosophy was really to do more with snobbery and status than it was to do what was practical and good for the country. And it went from worse to worse because all sorts of potty little universities opened up under the very broad light touch of the education department. And they more or less carried on the way that they were carrying on, and not doing anybody any favors. But I was saying Stuart is a graduate of Sussex University, and he is very keen that we should help take part in the development of these young people. And he is at the moment talking to the university to talk about mentoring, that youngsters can come and spend time with us and find out what real television, frontline television, is all about. And believe me, because we are terribly small and people do far many things, then they would normally do, and if they're working for the BBC and so on. It is very good grounding for them. Very good grounding. And we're a happy bunch too. they're not uncomfortable with us. But, and finally, I mean, the nonsensical part of this whole thing with universities and university degrees is that somebody proposed that all policemen should have to have a degree. Now, if anything is crazy, it's that. if there is anything that mostly is practical, excuse me, it's. I better have another sip of beer to keep me awake. There we are. If anything is practical, it's being a policeman. You deal with some pretty nasty people. And in the old days, the sergeant would give a clip around the ear to the local yobs in a back alley, and they would respect him for it. Nowadays, you can't even suggest that. Don't even think it. Much rather that we have our policeman carrying a piece of paper that says, hey, look here. I've got a piece of paper here that says I'm a policeman. I mean, how crazy can you get? How crazy can you get? But as we would expect, is there you go. Labour claims it puts a cap on aspiration. Ministers defend their crackdown on universities' rip-off degrees because the Prime Minister said he wanted to stop people being taken advantage of by restricting universities in recruiting students to low-quality courses. But critics, including the Labour Party, have accused the government of seeking to put caps on the aspirations of our young people. On the contrary, whenever you change course, there is always some troubled water. And I don't suspect for one moment that this is going to be any different. But the change of direction is absolutely vital to the welfare of our youngsters and also the health of our society, because we have more people rushing around, applying things academically. And if I may say so, one of them is embraced just because it exists, embraced by the big companies. Punch 1, punch 2, punch 3. We only take phone calls. You must do things this way. Even we are closing our branches because you can do it online. It's the craziest approach to a smooth running society I ever come across. But nobody will challenge it except the very people that it's designed to supposedly help. Huge numbers of customers have said to the banks, we want a branch. We want to be able to access money. We want to use cash, not cards. And the bank's response has been to say, well, the trends are. That's a favorite today, the trends. The banks have just abrogated all responsibility. And as a consequence, in this town, we only have one bank left. All the rest have gone. And when they go, their ATMs get boarded up. So there's only one focal point in the entire town where you've got an ATM. There is nobody to talk to. And when they say phone, the only other place that is worse is the doctor's office. When you phone and you're told that you're 15th or 25th in the queue and that your waiting time is 20 or 30 minutes. And even that is optimistic. Our entire society has been turned on its ear, and not for the better. And yet the only people who insist that it is are the people who want the change, who are implementing the change. If you're going to change, you have to make sure you're not changing for the sake of change. Just because technology is available to do something doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be the correct way to do it. So here we got an attempt, at least. I'm no Sunak supporter necessarily, but I think he's got this one absolutely right. And of course, what could we expect if the opposition is it does away with aspiration? Rubbish, absolute rubbish. Under the plans, the number of students who can be accepted onto poor quality degree courses in England will be capped, or possibly even reduced to zero. Sunak said the key message of the policy is you don't have to go to university to succeed in life. Absolutely true. Absolutely. For many people, he says university is the right answer, and it does brilliantly. But actually, there are a range of people who are being let down by the current system. They're being taken advantage of with low quality courses that don't lead to a job, leaves them financially worse off, and needs addressing. So, the government once again didn't do itself any justice whatsoever. It's communication, really. Well, I mean, there is a prime example. Is journalism, PR, advertising, all the communication skills are not geared for degrees. They're not geared for degrees. They are geared to a practical approach. And what have we got? Some of the lousiest communication systems anywhere in the world. Local councils are incapable of letting us know what the hell's going on. They have no concept of how they should do it or why they should do it. Banks, utility companies, and look at the uproar that we've had from the utility companies, whether it's sewage into the sea or huge leaps in the cost of energy. It's been in crisis. Has it explained itself properly? Maybe all the actions that it's taken are the right actions, but you wouldn't know it from the explanations that you get from them. And that is very, very sad. Very sad, to say the least. So that is a inside story that very much turns me on. Oh, serve me a beer. Oh, that's a celebrity story. I don't like covering celebrity stuff much, but one of the celebrity trials that is taking place is for being a bit naughty sexually, is Kevin Spacey, who is on trial for tampering with somebody when they did not welcome his attention. So he's being let's see, where is it? Which Crown Court is it? I think it's Southwark. But anyway, He's there, and his counsel says, "Okay, we're going to call the next witness." Well, now the witness didn't actually come into the box; it was done remotely. Right, that proves my point a little bit. It's done remotely, and basically, who turned up as the gung ho supporter of Kevin Spacey with Elton John? So here he struts into um, his studio and the other interest that he has during the day. Sometimes plays a gig at night, but mainly, apparently, is a great friend of Kevin Spacey's and has opted to give a testimony in his behalf. I don't know that the two Bs are fastidious in the way that they observe the niceties and the protocol of the law. So some things they can't say. But they normally give a very clear and directed view of some of the problems that occur in the NHS and some of the problems that occur in a good many areas of our society, and which need addressing. Now, I've wandered off a bit from my main point, and God bless Elton John for sticking by his power. Right now, one of the it is interesting, and once again, I'm not making any political point. We do make political points on this station, but not where we feel that we are out of kilter. I better have the sun is coming up to the yard arm, and I like to get in ahead of time. That's the beer you get if you come into the White Hart and have your tipple. If you have your tipple. One of the big issues is immigration. Perhaps, well, we talk about the number of people crossing the channel in small boats, and that more are coming than have ever come before. Continental Europe has had even worse, particularly those southern member states such as Italy and Spain, Greece, because the troubles in North Africa meant that a tremendous surge of asylum seekers have come out of there. We get upset because they are passed on. They're given a nod to Europe to when they take a risk of crossing the channel. The result has been a move to the right in the thinking of citizens. And it's all right. We're not thought police. We're not diving into the inside thinking. But often the action of an individual citizen combined with his fellows give us some idea of the things that are worrying people. And immigration is one of them. And what is happening in Europe is that right-wing parties, so-called right-wing parties, let us say right of centre parties, have begun to gain in strength to strength. So the sort that we deal in is a lion, a tiger, that sort of animal, And I've lost my way a little bit. But what I'm trying to say is that we are not used to this large influx of asylum seekers, and in doing so, there has been this lurch to the right of political parties. And when I say we're used to dealing with lions and tigers, is I'm trying to say really is that we are used to dealing with animal issues. We're used to dealing with issues which don't involve people, and yet the biggest problem is one involving people, and it is beginning to show in their use of the vote polls. And we need to be aware of that. We need to be aware of the way that people are thinking. And for those people who are Brexiteers, or non-Brexiteers, or whatever, who gives a fig about Brexit or non-Brexit issues of people batting one another on the head. The fact is that there is a common purpose amongst all European states, whether members of the EU or whether just by virtue of geography happen to be here, is to try to solve this very troubling issue of immigration. And they expect their governments to. And those governments that have been either asleep at the switch or have argued against limitation, which the EU basically did, against border controls, taking away quotas, taking away the need for, well, there's the Schengen Agreement. The Schengen Agreement was a group of EU states in which you didn't need a passport to move in between. But what it means was is I think about 17 of the EU states that signed the Schengen Agreement. Things change, so it could be more, it could be less now. But once you're in through one country, and if there is a soft underbelly, you're in. Nobody is going to ask you for any more identification as you move from Germany to France to Switzerland. Well, Switzerland is a bad example because it's only a part member of the EU, associate member, as it were. But it doesn't matter. This has obviously become the underbelly of immigration across Europe, and including ourselves. So if brother solidarity with the EU is required, it looks as if we've got solidarity on this issue anyway. We need to be alert to that. If governments do not reflect the changes in the thinking or the desires of their constituents, if they are determined to thrust down our throats old style policies because of policy or belief, then they must accept the consequences, and the consequences could be total breakup of the EU. It's time for everybody to stop slagging one another off about being a Brexiteer or a non-Brexiteer, whatever. The time is for integrated thinking, an integrated look. And it wasn't there before. So don't say, well, you're going back to it. It wasn't there before. If it was, the legislation would have been broader and deeper. But that's one of the things that we've got to worry about. Right. Shall we? Little John, whatever your feelings about Little John, he is a good journalist. He calls a spade, but also he does his homework, and he uses his experience. So any young journalist setting out, whether they are recommended to look at Little John in terms of the way he writes, whatever, but the way he does his research and the way he uses his experience is well worthwhile taking note of. And what he is saying is, trade unions really sprang up because it's, quote, to look after the peasants, who were quite often put down by the masters or the people who owned the factories and so on. What he's saying now is that's not the issue at all. It's now from doctors on £128,000 a year to the trust fund toddlers of Just Stop Oil. It's the militant middle classes. And it's the middle classes who actually, one of two things, either they want to make a point. In other words, you think like us, otherwise we're going to be disruptive. Or they have now got greedy because life is reasonably good, and they are going to leave a whole sector of society behind. And that's the sector that, when it gets riled up, has caused changes of government that are quite dramatic. One thinks in terms of Russia, for instance. Some parts of Africa. Anyway, those are the bits and pieces in the newspaper, the inside of the newspapers. Let's just see what we have. I'm a little reluctant to play something that we have to stop halfway through. But here's one that I just love. Yes, here's one because he just passed a window a moment or two ago. That is Andy, the window cleaner. I hope I've got the right one. It's only 5 minutes long. But here is one of the great characters of Lewis, who, against all the odds, has survived. So let's play him. Just sitting outside when it's sunshiny, now that we can, in a pub. I'm talking to those people who get the day going, and who have I been meeting for years and years and years, is but Andy the window cleaner, a terrific character that everybody knows. Andy, how long have you been doing this?
Approximately 28 years.
28 years?
Yeah.
So you've seen some changes here?
Yeah, certainly, yes. Certainly, yeah.
What was it like 28 years ago?
So I can't honestly remember, Keith. I'm at that age now where the memory's going. But it was, certainly different and certainly busier.
Tell me, what's it like? Because you and I used to have a race to get to the high street first.
Oh yes, yeah.
6 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. We used to have a wager on it. But tell me, in those days it was empty, but times have changed. What is it like at 7 o'clock in the morning here in the
7 o'clock now is more like it used to be at maybe 5:30, 6 o'clock. There's nobody about. I don't find anybody. Even up to 9 o'clock, the town's still quite quiet. And obviously, since the lockdown and the shops were opening, it's sort of 10 o'clock in the morning before the shops are opening. So it's a lot quieter than I've ever known it really.
But you put in a fair old day. I mean, you're here early and you finish late.
Yeah, I do, Keith. I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of people think I don't, but I do. Yeah.
You clean windows, particularly the businesses, and I must say, one hell of a job you do too. They all look sparkling. But as they drift in, who are the first people to get to their shops? And we always think of shops opening at 9, but there must be a lot of people who get there well ahead of you.
Yeah, certainly. We've got Sharon at Bedworth's and Lucy. They're there quite often, certainly by 8 o'clock in the mornings now, getting their shop ready for opening at 9. I see them if I'm working this top of town. Obviously the girls going to work in Cafe Nero again. Yeah, again, Keith, it's not like it was. It's I'd really be racking my brains to say at 7 o'clock if I see anybody, really.
What did you do through lockdown?
I've done a lot of gardening, a lot of walking, lots of shopping, lots of housework. So I had one happy life. So,
Right,
yeah,
Dad.
and that's so that's still continuing.
Is she glad to get you out through the front door?
No, my wife works longer hours than me, so she goes out the door with me at about 6 o'clock every morning now. And she won't get home till about 6 in the evening, so I'm generally home. So I do the shopping probably on the way home today. And
now, over the years, you must have peered in through a window and seen a few things and thought, oh my goodness me, I better move on. Anything that sticks out in your mind?
when not so much doing the shops, but certainly when I was younger and I used to do the house windows, I saw quite a few things where you had to pretend you hadn't seen, and yeah, when they answered the door, you said, "Oh, sorry," but yeah, it's quite embarrassing for them and me. So.
It's always nice to know that the window cleaner has got a zip on his mouth.
Yeah, there certainly some signs.
Not that I would do anything wrong.
No, exactly.
So what does the future hold, Andy?
I don't know for me, Keith, really. I mean, I'm looking at it now, my work just gets less and less, but I love what I do and I love coming into the town, even though I don't live in the town. I love to work here. But the work's getting less and less, so I maybe have to do it on a part-time basis and get another outlet somewhere else. So.
Well, people certainly enjoy you. I mean, you're a breath of fresh air first thing in the morning.
Thank you.
Do you find that everybody quips with you, or some people are a bit grumpy?
No, certainly not. No, I can't think of anybody who's off with me in the morning or whatever time of day. Most people are quite cheerful, and yeah, I think they like it that I'm cheerful, so it helps them. So I hope it does.
One thing I always admire you for a lot of things, I may say, because I think that not a lot of people can do your job. But one of the things that I admired was some of the big boys moved in.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
And you saw them off.
No, unfortunately, I did at first, but unfortunately, like the restaurants, they've gone now, Prezzo. I used to clean Prezzo, Pizza Express and Ask, but they all went national company overnight on me, so I lost them, and they were all like 2.5 hour jobs, so I lost a day's work overnight with them. To be honest, I lost them probably about 5 years ago.
But
and that
some
was quite
of those
a dent in my income.
Yeah, I mean, you're such a favourite. So you stay with all the favourites, I think.
Oh, certainly, yeah. I mean, the independents and some of the national companies are very loyal.
Big business, stay away. We don't want you. Andy, it's always a pleasure to see you.
Yeah, and you, Keith.
And we like to talk to people who start off early in the day and find out what it's like in the mist, because as you say, at the moment it's quiet.
Oh, certainly.
Who knows what the future holds?
Let's hope it turns out for the best for us all. If anybody commercial wants a window cleaner,
For a good story. I was going to spend just a minute or two talking about cocktails. Now I'm going to talk. Regularly, I hold court in the. Once again, it's my magnificent. We had many a good time. He was manipulation of the authority. The program that I showed just a while ago, and how I managed to get them on, I have no idea. But they shouldn't be there. And do you think I can stop it? No, I can't. I think that you better see me. But that's Andy the window cleaner, and he's a terrific character. A terrific character. It's now 10 to 11, and it's been a bit of a bitty morning for one reason or another. And I think tomorrow we're back with a bang again, because we have Stuart Dolby in the morning, and then we go on to who comes next? Can't think. But Wednesday is always a very yes, we get John Henty, plenty of Henty, at 10:30 or so. So there's plenty coming up tomorrow for you to get your teeth into. And in the meantime, as I have been working. This television station is beginning to really motor. We're grateful that many of you like the rough and tumble that we present. And we are very keen to make sure that we bring you what you want. So we two things. First of all, the last 2 weeks in August, we are going to close down. We are working very hard in the background. And we've got some really ambitious stuff on the back burner, not on the back burner, on the front burner, is actually being looked at in terms of bringing you stuff that will be exciting for you, but also will reflect well upon this town. And on top of that, we are performing the duty of watchdog, keeping an eye on everything. The three councils, well, we tend not to look at the county council so much unless they do anything outrageous, like sort of council bus passes and that sort of thing. So we do our very best to do that. But it needs a lot of planning, and there aren't many of us. So we're going to take that short break. We also, in the meantime, trying very hard to keep you entertained and informed. And with limited resources, that's sometimes difficult. It is 12 minutes to... so yes, it's 10:52. It's actually 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes to noon, and I think that we're just going to call it a day today, a little bit early. We don't want to bore you by just talking for the sake of talking, but we do have a full day tomorrow, and we would like you to join us at tomorrow morning at 8:30. Or any time in between there and 11 o'clock. So for the moment, I'm going to say toodle pip. This is Keith Hayes out of the White Hart Hotel in Lewis. And we look forward to seeing you. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.